couple of years before we started this show, I got it in my head that I wanted to learn to ride a unicycle. I guess back then life didn't seem complicated enough. So I talked my wife into buying me one for my birthday. Then I spent about a week or so in a hallway in my apartment trying to learn the basics of mounting it and shit. But to really learn, I knew I was going to have to find a place where I could go out and fail a bit. Luckily, just down the road from my building was a basketball complex with like 8 basketball courts worth of space that was usually empty after school. It's public property and there's a fence all the way around it, which is a really useful thing to have to cling to when you're learning your first baby steps on a unicycle. So I started going out there every day after work, teaching myself the basics. Because unicycling is like most skills. The trick is to just do it over and over again, and eventually you get it. The trick to learning, so much as there is one, is convincing yourself that you actually will eventually learn. Now, of course, as I'm doing this, the basketball complex isn't completely empty. There's a group of 4 or 5 boys about 12 or 13 years old that are always hanging out there playing basketball pretty much every day. And at first, they're having a lot of fun at my expense. They'd jeer and they'd talk shit and they'd laugh every time I fell, and I fell a lot, and humorously, right? The unicycle would go skittering along the way, and they would tell me that I was wasting my time and I would never get it. But after about 2 weeks, I was good enough that I didn't give them a lot to laugh at anymore, and a couple of weeks after that, I was good enough to literally unicycle circles around them, and along the way, I had demonstrated to these kids that seemingly impossible goals are attainable if you accept small victories, let yourself fall a few times, and believe in yourself enough to keep getting back up. Or at least that's what I hoped to demonstrate to them. But I'd been chatting with them along the way. I got to know them a little bit. And what I saw instead was a transformation from "you'll never get it" to "you are unlike me." Even though they had watched damn near every step of the process, from clinging to the fence like a frightened toddler to competently riding the damn thing, rather than accept that that's just how human beings work, they built a mythology in their heads where I had some ability that they couldn't tap into. I was just the kind of person that could do that, and they weren't. I think about that a lot these days because I feel like Heath, Lucinda, Eli, Anna, and I have sort of done the same thing with this show. Not to suck my own dick here, but I feel like this show has made a difference. Not a big national, culturally measurable difference, to be sure, but we've made a lot of small personal differences. We've made people feel less alone. We've emboldened people. We've connected people. We've inspired people. We lifted some voices up, and to a lesser degree, we've knocked a few down. And we've made people laugh even when there was no good reason to laugh. And along the way, we've demonstrated that it could be done. We showed that a group of people who had no real experience or expertise could make a difference. And instead of realizing that and accepting it, a lot of people who watched it happen put us in a separate category from themselves. They said we were just the kind of people who could do this shit, just like I was the kind of person who could learn to unicycle. Folks, when I decided I wanted to do this podcast, I had never owned my own computer, unless you count the Commodore 128 that my brother gave me when he went to college. And sure, I had some experience as an entertainer, but it was as a juggler. The only entertainment experience less useful for a person moving into an audio-only medium would be mime, which is the other experience I had. The only relevant experience I had was the confidence you get when you learn to ride a unicycle. And look, I'm not saying that everybody can start a successful podcast. That's not true. And even if it was, we don't need that kind of competition. What I'm saying, though, is that everybody can make a difference. Maybe not a big national, culturally measurable difference, but a difference, right? Like, you might not be able to make trans people feel safe, but I bet you can make a trans person feel safe. You probably can't take down a theocratic president, but maybe you could take down a theocratic school board member. You might not have the time to start a secular organization in your area, but you probably have the time to join one. You know, the fire hose of fascist shit coming from the White House is designed to overwhelm us and make us feel helpless. I keep saying this. It's designed to flood the space so much that any action seems hopeless against it. And most of us are predisposed to doubt ourselves anyway, so we don't need much of a push to fall into complete apathy. But you can do something. I'm confronted by proof every day, and so are you. The people making a difference aren't fundamentally different than you. Yes, they have advantages that you don't have, but if you look hard enough, you're going to see that you have advantages that they don't have as well. is a hard thing to accept, not just because we're also riddled with self-doubt and experience to back it up, but also because it's such an intimidating thing to know. Because as soon as you accept that you could make a difference, you run out of excuses not to.